and welcome to Perspective. Tonight, two major stories. One, of course, is the UN Security Council warning that Taliban and their interference as far as security is concerned when we look at the region, when we look at South Asia, when we look at, of course, Central and South Asia, and, of course, the Afghan authorities responsible for attacks within Pakistan. We'll be talking about that in detail. A little later on, we'll also be focusing on COP30 and, of course, the kind of takeaways from that, and also the fossil fuel phase-out roadmap and the controversial as far as 80 countries pushing for ambitious actions on as far as talks and their disruption is concerned. All of that today on Perspective. Of course, also we know about a tragic incident that happened in international aviation as India's indigenously developed Tejas fighter jet crashed during a demonstration at the Dubai Air Show on Friday, killing the pilot. Of course, it's a tragic, sad incident. And we also want to take a moment to talk about how tragic it has been as far as aviation is concerned, and of course the loss of life there at the Dubai Air Show on Friday. I have with me today Shahryar Khan, who's a security analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Major General Zahid Mehmood, who's a defense analyst, and we'll have other guests during the course of the program. Let me start off with you, General Saab. As far as, of course, this threat is concerned, we know and we have been telling the world for a while that this is a genuine threat. We've been telling the world, we've been presenting dossiers, we've also, of course, presented evidences in the recent talks that were held in Turkey. How are you looking at this statement at this time that has come from the UN Security Council? Shahryar, the same question to you as far as this threat is concerned. You know, of course, it's a very real threat when we look at South Asia, we look at Central Asia also. When we look at the spin that we've seen, even when we look at the background of the talks, we look at what they've been saying to us. How do you look at this statement? Of course, it's also a stamp on what Pakistan has been telling the world. It's also exonerating what, you know, the spin that the Afghan Taliban were trying to give this when we look at the talks. How are you looking at it?
So this is a very clear indicator that the world does not accept the Taliban's narrative when they try to basically move away from the limelight, and they don't accept that various terrorist organizations of all hues and colors are operating from the Afghanistan soil. Now there is one narrative that comes from the rest of the world, and then there is another narrative that the Afghan Taliban are trying to spin, and the world is now done with that. Denmark, a non-permanent UN member, they've basically resonated the same concerns that Pakistan has been putting across the world. Pakistan's perspective, Pakistan's point of view is not coming just yesterday. Since 2021, Pakistan has been using various channels of diplomacy, various multilateral diplomatic areas. There is a trilateral, there is a bilateral between Pakistan and Afghanistan, there is a trilateral between Pakistan, Afghanistan and China, there is the Moscow format, there is the SCO format, and various other formats of diplomacy that have been used and exhausted by Pakistan. In various UNSC meetings, Pakistan has basically brought this concern to the rest of the world. And now this narrative or perspective from Pakistan is resonating with the rest of the world as well. And Denmark is also basically saying the same things. Around 6,000 to 8,000 fighters based out of Afghanistan are creating a regional instability in Pakistan. This instability is not just affecting Pakistan. Pakistan is bearing the brunt of this whole onslaught. But this also affects the Central Asian states, this affects other countries in the region, and this is creating not just regional instability, this is also a huge concern for countries that are also not in this region. We haven't forgotten what happened in Russia. ISK again is established, again operating from Afghanistan soil, sending terrorists from Afghanistan through Europe and to Russia, where this terrorist incident happened in Moscow, in that hall where 150 people were killed. Then we have various other examples, not just from Pakistan, from Iran as well, where they have attacked and killed scores of civilians. Now the Western countries, especially the European Union, which obviously was represented this time around by Denmark, which is a member of the EU, they have also raised the same concerns of security, of illegal migration, and this migration, because of the Afghanistan issue, has become a security issue and moved away from the humanitarian issue.
But when we talk about, we've been for a while saying that, of course, we want the world to react, we want the world to realize, and of course, we saw the mediation happen in Turkey. When it comes from Norway, do you think, and it comes, of course, UN Security Council, that background or that cover overall, do you think that the world is listening now more?
The world is definitely listening. And the biggest example is the fact that Pakistan and the US have indulged in various counter-terrorism dialogues. And in those dialogues, Pakistan has basically put forward proof and evidence that Afghanistan's soil is being used to conduct terrorist attacks. Other than that, according to the Doha agreement, Afghanistan, or I would say the Taliban regime, basically gave assurances not just to the US but all negotiating stakeholders that their soil will not be used to conduct terrorist attacks outside their territory. Now, they also gave assurances that there will not be a presence of Al-Qaeda over there. So now today, if we jump to 2025, there's TTP operating from their soil, ISK is operating from their soil, Al-Qaeda is like now active under the banner of TTP, and there are like over 50 different groups that are operating under the umbrella of TTP. Now this is a huge security concern. This is not just a concern for Pakistan. This is a concern for the US. This is a concern for all the regional players as well. And now they're like coming together at the same table. Even high-level representation from Turkey was here last week to have closed-door meetings with the Pakistani leadership to decide how to take this forward.
Let me go to Major-General Zahid Mehmood on this also. General Sir, this is also like, we are talking about the fact that the world is now finally listening to a concern that Pakistan has voiced repeatedly with evidences, and also, of course, the sacrifices that Pakistan continues to give for the fight against terrorism. It is now a concern that seems to be resonating with the world. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. The whole world was aware of what all was happening in Afghanistan and the way transnational terrorism was taking place from Afghanistan. That was very well known to the world. But to be very honest, it is the national and domestic interest of every country, rather the bilateral interest sometime once they deal with Pakistan. So now after Pahalgam, after Pakistan's performance in Operation Mahrukh, Pakistan all of a sudden became a meaningful and a kind of a stabilizer in the region. So the whole world has recognized that Pakistan is a factor of stability in the region. And anyone who wants to pursue their interests, who wants to pursue their political interest in this region, especially in Afghanistan, because they all feel threatened. This soil has become a transnational threat once again. And we have seen incidents happening in Russia, incidents happening in Central Asia, and even the United States of America. And if you remember a few months back, Central Command Commander General Kurela, ex-commander, he made a statement that Pakistan is cooperating with them. Pakistan was cooperating with United States of America also. That was all regarding and concerning the terrorism which was emanating from soils of Afghanistan. We have handed over an Al-Qaeda terrorist to Americans. So everyone knew that. But now it is the recognition in Security Council. This is coming from the Western country that values a lot. Probably this recognition will lead us to a joint international and regional application in Afghanistan, because Pakistan has tried all its best. Pakistan has given the maximum chance to the peace. We have put in a lot of efforts to make this de facto setup in Kabul, which is not administering Kabul for the people of Afghanistan, but because of the proxy. They're administering it for the proxy sponsor state. I am hinting at India. Now, the first step has been established that the TTP, Tehrik Taliban Pakistan, is not only a threat to Pakistan, but to the region and to the whole international, world order. And then indirectly, actually, there'll be a recognition of all the spoilers who are playing this important role, the proxy sponsors. They're not directly naming India, but of course they understand that why India has adopted this hybrid approach from the soils of Afghanistan. That is the plausible deniability, the advantage of plausible deniability that they are taking. But probably this will lead to this understanding as well. Pakistan now has to build on diplomatically, politically on this present situation, and will have to pursue the diplomatic objectives, will have to pursue the world that we need to raise a coalition to fight against this terrorism in Afghanistan, to bring some sense of stability in Afghanistan.
So when we talk about, you said that Pakistan, of course, has been saying this for a while, but when we talk about recalibration in terms of strategies, do you think that the world is coming together anytime soon to sort of, come together on this and perhaps, work on counter-terrorism strategies? We, of course, share a border which is, huge, and it has its own concerns. But of course, Pakistan has been on the foreground. In terms of that kind of a collaboration, do you see it forthcoming now?
Probably it will take some time. There is a larger understanding, but as far as the kinetics is concerned, primarily we need to understand that there is a recognition and realization inside United States of America. President Trump has been saying that this mess which was created in Afghanistan, United States is responsible for a larger part of it because of this poorly crafted withdrawal, and he has been, tagging it to a kind of a embarrassment and most embarrassing moment for the Americans, the kind of withdrawal. So there is a recognition that this the $7 billion ammunition weapons which they have left. So America is, there is a realization in the United States as well that they are responsible for this mess in Afghanistan, this chaotic Afghanistan. So probably we need to put little more pressure, rather than we need to establish more contact with United States of America and other stakeholders in Afghanistan. Because, till the time you will not make these countries realize, especially the West, that there is a threat for you, and they have understood it, but practically operationalization of the strategy, that is more important. That's why I always maintain and say that we need to establish the regional collaboration as well, and as well as international collaboration. Because of the competing interest in South Asia and Southeast Asia, probably there are a few things which needs to be bridged, and Pakistan is the best bridge available to create a coalition where you can see the support from the Chinese coming, support from the United States coming, because the stability in Afghanistan is of interest to all the major powers. Although their strategy to achieve that stability can be different. Somebody like United States, they are using their Middle Eastern policy, their application in Middle East is also impacting Afghanistan. So that
when we look at General Sahab, when we look at moving forward on the international front, in terms of strategies, in terms of coming together, you think that this is a tangible, the UNSC and the cover of it and these statements that are coming forward? And these will now lay the groundwork for perhaps international bodies, because this region is a cause of concern for the world, because of course, we are nuclear nations when we look at Pakistan and India, and the potential of escalation is certainly huge for the world.
Yes, of course. Of course, these are, I think, indirectly, this is a conflict between India and Pakistan, the way now this latest application is taking place. TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan, they have become the clients of this sponsor state, that is India. So they are in communication, they are in coordination, and there is this whole structure of the state. This Indian application has to be understood by the world, whether it is, this use of terrorism, use of proxies, use of non-state actors has become the lead instrument of their policy. We have seen this application in Canada once they murdered Niger Singh in Canada. We have seen this application, the sort of application in United States of America once they planned Gurvan Singh murder. So there are rulings of the United States courts against the Indian government officials, that they have been overseeing all this. They are using underground gangs like Beshnai gangs and all that. So now the same policy is being implemented through Afghanistan. So they have the recruits, they have the foot on ground. people coming from Afghanistan and TTP, and they're using this whole structure of the state is there. So once we see the whole picture, the international community has to be told what is the threat for them in this. Basically all the states, they pursue their own interests. So you have to make them understand the kind of threat which is emanating from this soil against themselves. Those countries who have to support Pakistan. So Pakistan will have to work a lot. I'm not saying that mere passing of resolution or mere indication of such things, because we don't have time. We have to follow it up with a lot of positive and aggressive diplomacy, with a lot of and positive implementation, operationalization of those strategies. And of course, we need the international support, because no country in the world can fight this menace of terrorism alone. Even 20 years of applications,
Yet, of course, we have been at the forefront for a very long time. Thank you so much, General Saab. Thank you for your time. Shahryar Saab was saying, I think is interesting. First, he's talked about how, of course, no country can fight that war alone. Yet, we have to acknowledge the kind of sacrifices that Pakistan has made in the war of terror. And at the same time, having the world look at their own interests and yet, see this as a growing concern. Do you think they're going to be forced to look at it now as a cause of concern as far as India's involvement is concerned overall? Because, like you heard, General Saab, it is not, of course, it has been extending much beyond our region now to Canada, US, and it seems to be, it needs to be reined in at the very least, right?
So Mahrukh, when it comes to Afghanistan and India's role in Afghanistan, Afghanistan is ready to sell their services to the highest bidder.
Okay.
It's not just India, any other country is welcome. They are ready to provide services of any sorts, especially when it comes to Pakistan. They basically feel they have a score to settle. And let me tell you something very interesting. When all of these discussions were taking place in Turkey and with Qatar, one thing that stood out was that Afghanistan does not even consider the border a border. They basically said this is a colonial line that the British basically made. So they basically consistently kept on changing the goalpost when it came to negotiations. So according to that understanding, till Attock, which is like 100 kilometers from Islamabad, these Afghan Taliban, they basically consider all of this Afghan territory. Okay. And when it comes to TTP, they basically think that TTP is fighting their battle to get their territory back. That is why they keep on saying that, this problem is a Pakistan-centric problem and TTP is not in Afghanistan. And now the good thing about this international diplomacy is that the world has basically understood. And these whole sessions that took place, one in Qatar and then two in Istanbul, this basically exposed the Taliban regime to the rest of the world, and then slowly the narrative is changing. I do understand that the world's attention is very divided. One, they have their attention in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Secondly, in the Middle East. Then thirdly, they are more focused on China. But historically, whenever any country or Western powers or even the European Union, they have ignored Afghanistan. Afghanistan has basically become a problem that keeps on growing, and then one international incident happens and then the world wakes up. So what the world needs to understand now is that Pakistan doesn't really need anyone to fight for Pakistan. Pakistan is just asking for diplomatic support, and Pakistan is asking for maybe some sort of technology that Pakistan can use, because now they have very sophisticated weaponry left by NATO countries. So the burden and onus is on the Western front to basically come to Pakistan's aid, and Pakistan is very capable of fighting its own battles.
You're saying that they have to look out now for the threat that it may pose to them.
And Pakistan is a frontline state. Pakistan is now fighting for the safety and security of the Western nations and our neighbors as well. So is the world waiting for another incident like 9/11 or another incident like the one that happened in Moscow? And if they want to take some action, now is the time to basically support, now that the Afghan Taliban, their ideology the way they have an expansionist policy. If they don't recognize the border between Pakistan and India, that basically means they want to grow, they want to expand beyond their boundaries. So this ideology that they are propagating from within their geographical bounds, in which women and children, they're not even allowed to get formal education, is this the ideology that the world wants to spread in this region? So
and yet they continue to look the other way. I mean, the concern is there, and it has been for some time. When we look at what's happening, you know, the potential, and like you said, the treatment of women, children, and what it means, the lack of education, equal treatment, and you know, of course, marginalization that we consistently see happening within Afghanistan. With that, I'm going to go to Sumaira Khan, who's a security analyst. She's just with us now. Sumaira, we're talking, of course, about the statement and that has just come in as far as the UN Security Council is concerned, and of course the fact that Pakistan has consistently been warning the world of the threat with proofs, with evidences. In terms of a collaboration, we've been talking about how the world now perhaps will have to come to some kind of an agreement on how to deal with this threat and what it poses, not just to Pakistan, but as a whole, to the region and the potential of escalation of it. In terms of counter-terrorism strategies, how are you looking at things? Do you think that the world and Pakistan can come together on something there and you know, come down on this?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh, and thank you for inviting me. And I was listening to the gentleman you were speaking prior to me with them, and I very much agree with the points they had been raising. Let me give you the good news first. We have come a long way. We have come a really long way in determining the facts to the world out there that, see, this is how Pakistan is being affected by the so-called buffer zone that was created by the Britishers back in the time. Then this buffer zone was attacked by two major and supreme powers of the world. Although Afghanistan could not be converted into a graveyard of empires because one of the others, Pakistan's role was there. So if the Afghans take a credit for Afghanistan being a graveyard of the superpowers and leading powers in the world, that's totally a fake narrative. It's just for you to just give you a rosy picture of like I being an Afghan, if I speak for an Afghan. All the governments, be it Hamid Karzai, be it Ashraf Ghani, be it the Taliban 1.0 and now the 2.0, they are just raising these slogans just to give a rosy picture to all their masses, Afghan diaspora and a common Afghan. Why we have come a long way. If I go to the start of my own career, almost 22 years ago, I used to hear all these statements from the Pakistani officials as well, that we are trying to reach a UN, we are trying to reach the OIC, we are trying to reach the international platforms, we are trying to give them the dossiers of facts and evidence that this is how we are being affected by the soil of Afghanistan. And let me tell you very honestly, people would not listen to us. People would look at us with some other shades, like they would not trust us. But now, after 22 years, somehow the other, I would really thank this Modi regime, this currently the current Indian government led by Narendra Modi. They actually helped us a lot in exposing their own country's role in other countries in the shape of clandestine operations. And now, if you compare situation with 22 years ago and now, world has become united in taking off those rose tinted glasses and wearing those beer goggles, and now they are looking at the helm up, they are looking at the situation of affairs, world affairs. Keeping India in the central evil role is very obvious to the world. My colleague prior to me, he mentioned Canada rightly. I'll mention UK and Australia as well, France as well. US is there. So people have started opening their eyes, and in other countries as well, people are getting a heavy dose of awareness. Their conscious is awakening right now. People are seeing a real India instead of that slogan chanted secular India. So it was indeed a divine intervention for us, but Pakistan has put in a hell of a hard work in that, and we did not accept the defeat despite having constraints via economy, despite having constraints, and we were facing lack of resources when we were part of war against terrorism. Our coalition support fund was suspended. Our people faced restrictions in US. Our military personnel faced restrictions because of a very strong Indian lobby in Washington and other places. But now it's the same Washington D.C. and New York, where the UN headquarters we are seeing, the D.C., the Capitol Hill, we are seeing immense support for Pakistan. And
I'm going to interject. Of course, you're right in terms of, the kind of support that Pakistan should have had, and we have not, we've consistently, fought this fight. The sacrifices, we look at 80,000 casualties, and of course, billions of dollars that Pakistan, the sacrifice of the people of Pakistan. And when we look at the situation today, do you think that there are chances of having, some kind of a censorship, in terms of what's happening from India, when we look at, censuring them on what is happening from their side, when we look at the international community? Of course, you said, and that's true, that camouflage and the facade that they've been painting is now off. But in terms of the status and of course, the privilege that they enjoy as a nation, in terms of the role that they play in perpetrating terrorism through countries like Afghanistan, is now at the forefront. So there has to be some kind of an action, right? Do you think we're a long way off from there yet?
I partially agree with you here, Mahrukh, because I would not disagree with you that yes, we are long way, we still have long miles to cover. But as I told you, India being cutting the corners of foreign policy with least care, and specifically what they recently did and are doing with Afghanistan, it is creating their own internal turmoil. It is fueling their own fire inside house, and it's something is brewing inside India. And more of it, if I take you to Afghanistan, like now the world is asking Afghanistan to cut the crap and reveal and expose your real face.
There has to be a lasting solution to Afghanistan also, and I think Shahryar here also mentioned, when we look, and of course we know that the status of women, the treatment of women, the concern there, and how, whether they are functioning as a war economy, and of course from if they're getting funding from places like India at this time, all of that is something that the world can see, and there are evidences of it. So there has to be some way to deal with this problematic, what is becoming a problematic region for the region.
Let me tell you a very blunt news, or you can say it's my own analysis because I worked in Afghanistan. This girls' education system, this human rights situation, this very fragile situation of Afghan's masses is not a point of concern for the current regime of Afghan Taliban. It's very brutal coming from me, but this is the truth. You can counter check it from any international, independent, and neutral organization. Just to complement my own point of view, cigars reports are there. The current regime is right now serving as rent state, and I hope you can measure a response by me in terms of how they are running Afghanistan. It's not a state of affairs, but it's a very brutal state of affairs right now. They're only earning through their economic corridors. As for the time being, Pakistan has shut its economic corridor. They are facing the music right now, although they are not admitting it. They're trying to wear a very brave but fake face. Their revenue is facing a dent. But let me tell you very honestly, if you think that world is going to take any action regarding human rights situation, they're not. They will not, because they don't have any capacity. They are right now afraid of one thing, that Afghanistan is fast becoming hub of more than 2 dozen hostile terrorist organizations. Yes, Afghanistan is fast becoming. And why? Because these NGOs, these international powers have been giving them fire to fuel in the shape of $46 million per week. Why you had to do it? And there is a testimony in their houses, big houses, in their foreign affairs standing committees, the hearings. Why you had to do it? Why you didn't comply with all the conditions? Why you couldn't make them surrender to the terms of world? When it was right time, when Pakistan was calling upon the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, world was hesitant because they wanted to see some positivity for the Afghan masses, which never turned out to be. Now you are faced with a menace. that takes pride in getting itself as the tag of a rent estate. And you can see the statements. I was really amazed at the statements of their ministers, that whenever they go and meet any Indian official in Delhi, they they start writing their tweet by like, heartburn for Pakistan. And trust me, if they, for me, they must be very they are acting goof, because they actually have no idea Pakistan is not at a loser end if we cut trade ties with Afghanistan. Trust me, I'm saying this with guarantee. So if there is a state of affairs in
Of course, Sumaira, thank you for being with us. I'm going to go to Shahryar. Shahryar, one last question to you in terms of mediation, the efforts that have been at play by Turkey also, and of course Russia and their delegation, and we were expecting more headway with regard to that. How are you looking at that effort now?
Mahrukh, the only thing that I basically observed from that whole exercise was that one, the Taliban lacked the sincerity to even indulge in any sort of like negotiations. Why? Because as I mentioned earlier, they were kept on changing the goalposts.
But in terms of the role of the mediators also?
Well, the role of the mediators, I will keep my opinions to myself.
They've been very sincere in the sense that, of course, we saw Turkey, Qatar, and of course now we are also looking at a delegation, if we look at Russia. Yeah. Overall, in terms of them, into moving this forward, how do you see things?
Well, Mahrukh, first of all, the Afghan state is holding a gun not just to Pakistan, but the rest of the regional stakeholders. And they're basically saying that if you don't give us money, I'll be very blunt, that there are certain terrorist organizations that are focused towards your country. Russia has security concerns. ISK is attacking Moscow. Central Asian republics, they have concern because IMU and ETIM is being supported by Taliban. Pakistan, TTP and various other organizations. Again, the same case with Iran. These countries do not have a choice but to step in and do some sort of diplomacy. Other than that, there are only kinetic measures, and Pakistan is very ready to apply those now.
And so you think that they will, at some stage, we will look at a regrouping, we will look at perhaps a sit down again?
I personally think diplomacy should always go hand in hand, but if that time period is used by the Afghan Taliban to regroup, to shift the leadership from one geographical location to another, and basically arm them, train them, and basically make them ready for a longer guerrilla warfare, then I personally don't think that would be a very smart strategy on part of Pakistan to give them this time. I think as soon as Pakistan gets credible.
Also, of course, Pakistan is at the same time, working. We've always defended our borders, and in terms of our counter-terrorism strategy, that is always at play. So one doesn't necessarily preclude the other, right? There can be a parallel action also.
That is exactly what I'm saying. Diplomacy can go hand in hand, but diplomacy should not be used as complacency. That as long as diplomatic channels are open, the TTP won't attack Pakistan. That would be a very that won't be a very smart strategy. I basically say Pakistan should have a policy which should be offensive defense, and as soon as Pakistan gets credible ground intelligence, Pakistan should basically attack any sanctuaries that are operating in the Afghanistan soil.
Right. Thank you so much, Shahryar. Thank you for your very valuable input. I'm going to be moving on, of course, to COP30. And of course, the key takeaway there is what kind of tangibles do we expect? And we have with us Anam rathore. Anam, first of all, as when we look at Belém this year, what is the significant outcome in your opinion?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I think the debate is still ongoing for the past 3 days. There hasn't been much change because everyone, again, the fossil fuel phase out, that's where the question is stuck. While, will the world finally commit to a clear and just roadmap to phase out fossil fuels? The language is still, I think, there's a group that does not want the phase out language there. So for the past 3 days, because the negotiation stopped because of the fire yesterday, but before that, for the past 3 days, there hasn't been much change. So the current text, when we talk about text that comes out, avoids the very thing that we need to talk about. As I said, fossil fuels. There is no fossil fuel language that has been, there's no roadmap, not even a reference to paragraph 28 from the Dubai COP, which was, very historic from 2 years ago. And paragraph 28 was the line from COP28 that first called on countries to transition away from fossil fuels. And right now, since it's not included in the text, so it's a very big step back. So instead of concrete pathways, the draft includes sorry, it talks about like really softer language, and it talks about like voluntary. And
When we look at a fossil fuel roadmap for the future, you're saying that there are roadblocks there, and to what do you attribute this? And this reluctance, one would have to say.
I think there are a lot. Fossil fuel is, the people who sell fossil fuel, the countries who sell fossil fuel, it's like a very big business. So when we talk about phasing it out or phasing it down, we live in a very capitalistic world. So the people who are benefiting from it, no matter how much dangerous it is to the climate, no matter like countries like Pakistan, how much we're being impacted, if it's coming in the way of someone earning money. So there are a lot of fossil fuel lobbyists here who are ensuring again that this is not in the text.
But Anam, when we look at countries that push for action, when we look at countries that take a step forward as far as the leadership is concerned, that show that, which countries would you attribute that to in terms of dynamism and moving forward with regard to active dynamism with regard to climate?
I think right now it's like really also different because a lot of countries who are global north countries who are in the group of saying this word, phasing out fossil fuel. But if you look at historically, they have been big polluters. And right now they have the technology that if we phase out of fossil fuels, they can actually, their economy can move forward because they've invested in solar and they've invested in renewables and they have the technology. And right now we're talking about nuclear energy a lot. So sometimes there's also this debate going on that we want to phase out or phase down fossil fuels, but it has to be just. So there are a lot of countries which in other ways are pushing for more finance because what they say is, that's why I don't want to name a specific country, because at one phase you're saying phase down or out fossil fuels, but you're not providing the finance for countries like Pakistan to transition, or a lot of other countries who historically have not reduced emissions. But now if you just blank tell them phase out or phase down, but don't give them the finances to do it. So I think it's like everyone has sort of their own agenda, because again, I think the most important thing at every COP which is being discussed is the finance. And finance again is not that much,
Reluctance overall when we look at COPs happening, and like I said, the takeaways from them, and finance is the major issue. You've also said so. Do you think that there is an overall reluctance because of the prioritization as far as the world is concerned? The climate all over the world, when we look at the major economies, those, that the have-nots and the haves and the have-nots, and that difference is very much there. Their inability to sort of prioritize climate damage, is that one of the reasons?
I think yeah. Sorry, can you just, I think there was a lag can you repeat the question, please?
And I'm saying that, overall, when we look at the world and the priorities of the world at this time, how does climate damage, repatriation of it, in terms of the funding and what's coming forward and distribution of it, doesn't seem to be top of the agenda. Isn't that true?
I mean, to some extent, this is a climate conference. So all the people here, it is their priority in a way. But again, yes, people do come with agendas. When we talk about vulnerability, it's like climate change is impacting everyone, but some countries are more vulnerable because they don't have the systems to deal with them. So again, it's like in our capitalistic system that we're here, our world is, if you're not being impacted and just transitioning into the new system is going to cause you loss, a lot of countries do not want to support that. On a holistic way, if you look at it, everyone says, oh, it's, we want climate change to stop. But just saying that does not matter. Again, it shows.
When we look at COPs happening all over the world, and I think that we've spoken about this before also, you and I, when we prioritize COPs and we look at the tangibles from there, again, the last COP and what we took away from there in terms of the distribution of the funds, whatever was said, that doesn't seem to have translated. Is it the same about this one? And then what is the overall takeaway of the efficacy of these meetups if they're not going to be able to garner any real change in the dynamic of climate damage overall?
I think after last COP, there was a lot of things that just happened globally. So when we talk about finance, a lot of money comes through ODA, Official Development Assistance. And because elections happened in a lot of countries, their governments changed. So the ODA that they promised to, that comes to countries like Pakistan and a lot of developing countries, that is also shrinking. So the finance is already shrinking. Countries do make pledges that, oh, we're gonna, give this much money to, say, GCF, the Green Climate Fund, or some other fund, or the Loss and Damage Fund. But just those pledges are there. It doesn't actually materializes. So it's also like a lot of things happens in these negotiations. The text comes out, some countries say these big things, but then life happens and the situations in those countries change and they do take a step.
Fair? Is that fair? Because, as a statement, life is happening to us also. As a country, we've suffered so much. When we look at, the recent floods, and we are still reeling from that kind of damage. Our people are reeling from that kind of damage. You think that, we can sit and say this, that, life happens. Life happened to Pakistan also.
Oh, as a Pakistani, what I'm saying, I'm just telling you how it is. Unfortunately, I do
Right, I agree.
what's happening is
Of course.
absolutely wrong. Yes, I say it's absolutely wrong.
Anam, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this extremely important topic. Thank you for being with us. We spoke to you today, of course, about Afghanistan and, of course, the terrorism at play that seeps into our territory and Pakistan's continued resolve and the fight against terrorism that is now being echoed by the UN Security Council. Of course, also climate damage and what Pakistan expects from it as being one of the most affected countries in the world. We have high hopes, of course, from the COP happening at this time also, as we did from the last COPs also. And we hope that the world will realize that Pakistan still reels from the kind of climate damage that it consistently now faces, even though it is one of the least emitters of carbon fuel, carbon damage. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.